This is our podcast, The Working Poor.
So let's talk working poor. With Donald Trump unveiling his three-phase plan and going back and forth kind of on his comments on whether he'll be reopening the government. At one point, he claimed total authority this past week, and now he's kind of retracted that language and has replaced it with more governor-inclusive language, which we'll get into later. But so considering this, that it looks like the economy might be opening, how do we feel about this? What does this mean for the working poor? And should the economy be reopened?
I think it needs to reopen, but when we're safe. I like Fauci's idea of once we have a vaccine or something out there, we have nothing. We have no protection of this. I'm glad that Trump is at least talking about doing it in intervals and little steps instead of just, okay, here you go. Here's recess.
Well, he is proposing three phases, according to NWAonline.com, amongst other sources. It reports in phase one, the plan recommends strict social distancing for all people in public. Gatherings larger than 10 people are to be avoided, and non-essential travel is discouraged. In phase two, people are encouraged to maximize social distancing where possible and limit gatherings to no more than 50 people unless precautionary measures are taken. Travel could resume. And phase three envisions a return to normalcy for most Americans with a focus on identification and isolation of any new infections. So I guess it's just, is this too soon is the idea. But there's been people in Michigan, for instance, who have protested their governor very strongly and said that measures are too extreme. And I saw a video earlier, people were in traffic and it was like causing a whole big thing and blocking people from getting to work and stuff, it seemed like. And it was kind of like a protest and stuff. I don't know if anybody else saw it. But and this one person ended up saying that people need to get back to work and stuff. So when it comes to working poor people, from that perspective, should we be rushing the opening of the economy?
Most of us working poor are out on the front lines anyway, so we haven't, we've been working. A lot of us.
Well, a lot of working poor people haven't been working, though. And I think that that's an important point to make, because that's just the thing with reopening the economy, because it's a double-edged sword. Because we cannot do it too soon, and we have to do it very carefully. And ultimately, it can't just be a game of getting people back to normal when this virus is still spreading, because that could just have terrible consequences.
The testing for antibodies to see if you've had the coronavirus and didn't know it, like me, possibly, is coming out in a couple weeks. Maybe, it's like the science is creating the little steps for us. So why don't we just follow them, They're in a couple weeks, they'll have antibodies. People go to test, we'll know who's immune, if anyone. I don't know, I think science should be our leader.
It just seems like this thing's gotten so partisan, so many people are looking at this as like a Democratic thing or something, which is wrong. But I mean, I don't know. I think people are worried for right reasons, and like working poor people are out of jobs, and that's what they're scared about. But yeah, we definitely need to move in steps. But like Donald Trump's steps, are they just too soon?
I would like him to follow science, to see what the scientists and the doctors say, and then go with that. But he wants this all-powerful I am king mode. I tell us when we make a move. And his way might not be the safest.
And just to be clear, this plan is his recommendation to the governors to implement as they're ready, right?
Yeah, at first he was claiming total authority, that, the president had total authority, that he could, be responsible for opening or closing a state. Now he's kind of retracted that, and his exact words are, "You're going to call your own shots," Trump told governors Thursday in a conference call. "We're going to be standing alongside of you."
Good, because those are the people who know their own states. except for Michigan.
And that's where I think the power definitely should lie, because this is affecting different areas of the country differently, and it's not a one size fits all solution. And these communities need to be able to address it as they see fit.
Well, I think that I can't trust any of the stuff I hear. Everything is being exploited. However this thing plays out, whenever we get back to normal, whatever that is at this point, things are going to be different. Things are going to be different. Like after 9/11, when we had a lot of our freedoms restricted in a lot of countries where they've had success with this virus, South Korea, Taiwan, the reason they were successful is because they shut the countries down. They monitor people through their cell phones. They have this intensive tracking mechanism in place where they know where everybody is, who's got it, who doesn't have it, who needs to be in quarantine, facial recognition. They've got the works, and that's effective. But what's the cost? There's a consistent pattern of striking fear into the hearts of normal people, making them scared, and then offering the solution. But that solution comes with a price tag, and those are our freedoms. So yeah, open the economy, don't open the economy. I don't know what the answers are. I mean, the numbers are much better than they had expected them to be, which is probably due to the measures that have been taken, the isolation, and and people staying inside. And and the speculation is if we go back out, it's going to spike again. We don't know. We don't know any of these answers. And we're going to have to figure it out at some point. But in the meantime, this is a tremendous opportunity for the working class, because for the first time, so many people are recognizing their real power. That it's not these corporations and billionaires that run the world. It's the little people. It's the working class that actually run the world. And they're recognizing that on a very real level that hasn't been available to us before. And I think that's going to lead to a lot of change.
I mean, at the same time, we're saying that, then the corporations are getting the bailouts, and, so, and we're kind of, a lot of people are, waiting on government checks. A lot of people were expecting the stimulus, and a lot of people haven't gotten it that were expecting it because of complications and stuff. And like now they're waiting on the government to hand them money. So, I worry that, at the same time, we might have, realized a voice, but we've also found more of a dependence in our own government. And I think that's kind of what you were saying, Dan, too, that, so many people now are relying on the government because all these fear tactics. But I just think it kind of goes both ways. Now the corporations have gotten more bailouts now. We're waiting for the government to tell us what to do. So
Blinded and freedom restricted. They're going to take away more of our rights, just like they've done in the past. It's all part of a master plan.
And it's just kind of the question is, the cure, can we let the cure be worse than the disease itself? And I know that, I just worry about, my older family, as I said before. So, I mean, you hear these restrictions, and like, I know the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, and is going to issue similar phases to Donald Trump, where he's going to allow more and more people to gather, and loosen restrictions on surgical procedures, and loosen restrictions around retail establishments and stuff like that.
Well, when you look at it from a working poor perspective, I mean, why do we want to reopen? Why do we want to reopen? To get the economy going, right?
And to get people back to work.
Right, and to stimulate the economy, to get things moving again. But from a working poor perspective, we want to see that stock market fall in the garbage.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You go all the way down, because who who makes money on the stock market? 84% or something like that of the stock market is traded by the top 1%. The
Yep.
working poor, are not involved in the stock market, except on a peripheral sense, like pensions and things like that, 401ks. But the bulk of the stock market is used by the wealthy. When that stock
Mhm.
market falls, that's going to equalize things. That's going to put them. It's going to get rid of their millions, and it's going to put them more on a level with the working poor.
Yep.
And
And then
that's
But
there'll
where
be,
at
the
the
left.
end of the day, how does
Oh,
that solve the problem of people getting food on the table?
Well,
well, yeah, and
it's a struggle. It's a struggle. It's going to be a difficult time. That's what happened in the Depression. But what happened after the Depression, when you have all those people out of work and miserable and can't eat, that's when the New Deal became a reality. That's not
my
something that's not something that the supreme rulers would have ever approved of, if not for a Great Depression and so many desperate people. And that's what's going to get us out of this. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be hard for a lot of people, but it's going to change the way things are.
economically, my life hasn't changed one bit.
Yeah, nobody's does. Look at, I mean, this
No,
is the stock market.
it
Everybody gets
only
told
affects the rich.
it doesn't affect anybody. Any
No,
real people, work people.
yeah,
It's for investors.
yes, exactly. It affects the rich, and that's it. So let us out to build the economy. Don't let us out to build the economy. If you don't let us out, we're just
let me.
going to find other ways to, other
I,
outlets of communication and things. You know, we know how to suffer. We know how to get through it. We know how to land on our feet. We're the working poor. The rich people only know money. Well, if they don't have their corporations paying for them, they're lost. They lose everything. Stock market crash affects them more than us. So then I
Yeah,
can't
I
retire.
think.
I'll die. I might die anyway, before I retire.
Yeah,
I,
like I said, I just think from a working poor perspective, we want to keep things shut down for as long as we possibly can. I
Yep.
mean, it's the same
and
effect. It's the same effect as a general strike. It hurts us, but it pushes to change because it hurts the powerful more. And even when we do go back, the concept of general strike is going to be a much more realistic concept, and people are going to make that kind of stuff happen. And change is going to come regardless of how we handle this. But it's definitely opened a lot of eyes.
I just have to say, I understand the sentiment in that, but it's just inaccurate because working poor people have been affected, and we're not looking at both sides when we just say that the shutdown is best for the working poor.
yeah, we can be resourceful, poor people. We've always had to be. I understand that
Right.
completely. But being a working poor student, my school shut down. I lost my job. We say people aren't affected. No, I'm affected. There are just two sides to it, and it's not just clear cut and dry because it's going to be a long way to get there.
Well,
And that's
I,
going to bring more struggle, and so many people in the working poor are tired of struggling, and that's why the government offers these $1,200 checks, and we're sitting here waiting on the handout because which it isn't a handout. It should just be we need the help, but we're sitting here
oh,
waiting, and because we need it. We're tired of struggling. So I just think about that. So, so many people just want to get back to work. They want to get back to, to the idea of normal. How come it's every time we got to go through a revolution? It's poor people that suffer. The rich
right.
people aren't going to suffer. They're going to have to give in. But why do we have to make the sacrifices? That's what I'm saying.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you, Austin. But I'm just saying this: the sacrifices that we have to make now are not for the super powerful, but they are an investment in our future. It's going to be painful. It's going to be hard, but we have leverage for the first time probably in history, or at least a very long time. The
Yeah.
working poor has leverage that they've never had before, and we need to capitalize on it. Now's the time.
People are suffering right now. And it's easy to say that, suffering is going to bring good in the long term, but how do you get everybody on board with an entire revolution when people right now just want to get back to normal, and they want to go back to work, and they're not talking about revolution?
For our next segment, we will be joined by a fifth grade teacher who will be discussing her time during this coronavirus pandemic and how it has impacted her and her students.
She's a fifth grade teacher in the small town of Washington, New Jersey. She earned the Teacher of the Year recently for her school district. She's also a mom to her 3-year-old daughter, and she's a dancer, actor, and singer in our community theater. She's also played a large part with her school's shows, choreographing their musicals. Her name is Cailla Minerowicz.
Hello.
Hi,
Kayla.
Cailla.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Our fellow theater performer.
I missed you. How's it going?
I'm doing okay today.
So Kayla, you teach fifth grade, right?
Yes.
So how has it been since this whole coronavirus has kind of taken over, and I know schools are closed across the nation. What was it like when you first figured out that you wouldn't be going back to work?
Well, they did warn us that it would be a possibility on the Monday before. So we had a faculty meeting, and she said, my boss, Jackie Nasri, she was very upfront with us, and she said, it's not likely that we're going to be going to school next week. So we need to prepare everything this week for 2 weeks of at-home work. And so she gave us the Wednesday morning off. So we had a delayed opening, and we worked for 2 hours straight, and we copied everything in the world, and we made it happen.
Oh wow. So it was just like a very fast-paced situation. What is that? What does the at-home work consist of? Is any of it online? I know some teachers have kind of reverted to online work.
I wish we could have, but our district, not every single kid needs to have internet access for online classes to be the norm. Not every kid has either internet access or a proper device. So basically, a phone is not a proper educational device. And so not every kid had like a laptop or a computer at home. So we had to make packets for every subject, 14 lessons in each packet. So math, language arts, reading, the works, and every single special as well. And so we did 14 days of that. And then we found out 2 days later, that Friday afternoon, that we would not be returning, and they were to do that packet that was sent home with them. And then I think maybe a week later, they announced that we wouldn't be back in a month. So we had to return again and do a month's worth of work for them. Same style packets.
How do you check their work?
We haven't yet. They're going to drop it all off in 2 weeks, I think. And then it's going to sit for a while so there's no germs, and then we're going to correct it when it's ready.
And who's in the school now? Just administration?
Yep, and some of the custodial staff, I know that when we went there last time, I saw some of them painting, which is typically one of the things that they do in the summer. So they are using this time well, which is good. So everyone is still working and doing something, even if it's not their normal job.
Do you have any contact with your students, informal or otherwise?
Yeah, so a lot of my kids in my specific class, the 17 kids that I teach, they do have their own devices and internet access. 2 of them only have phones, but I do a couple different programs with them just because a huge chunk of the day, basically school has a huge social component, and I didn't want to lose that because that is what they enjoy most about school. So I use 3 different platforms. I have Class Dojo, which is just me and the parents. Then I have Google Classroom, which is me and the kids, and that's really just text. So it's kind of, they can just ask questions. I can type in questions and I can answer them, or they can say, hey, it's my birthday, and then everyone says happy birthday to them. It's almost like if you can think of like a Facebook feed for only the 18 of us, and there's no pictures, it's just words. And then we have our third platform, which is the kids' favorite. It's called flipgrid.com. And if you can think of like a YouTube channel, or I guess you could think of YouTube would be like the Flipgrid, and then each channel would be a specific topic. So we have the social, just random stuff you want to share, like, oh, look, this is my stuffed animal kind of videos. And, or like, look at me do this flip on my trampoline, those kind of videos. And then we have like a homework help type of channel that they can post stuff to, and I'll put different challenges there, of course, all optional. Nothing digital is mandatory. And then I have, there's one student that wanted to do crafts. So she's in charge of that channel. And then I have another student that's in love with science, and he's going to do all these science videos on there on his channel. And we have another student who loves her new hoverboard. So she's going to have a whole channel all dedicated to her hoverboard. So it's kind of like their creative lunchtime recess social box that's getting checked with that app. But surprisingly, I actually feel closer to the kids now. Like, so, like, I know a lot more about them, like, personally, compared to a month ago. So I know that a lot of people are like, oh, this is like a terrible situation, and we're trying to make the most of it. But these kids are very unusual little dudes, and they have a lot to share. And whenever they're in class, I'm forcing them to learn something. So it's kind of interesting to kind of flip it around. Like, you teach me something. One student made a spaghetti and I want to say hot dogs or something, and she explained the whole thing. It's nice to see them relaxed and like their true self.
A lot of educational programs have shown success with a more informal style setting, and that's kind of where you're at.
Yes, absolutely, because we want to make sure that they are socially and emotionally taken care of, so that when they return in September or on May 18th, I'm not so sure it's going to be May 18th, but when they do return to school, they will be okay and like ready and not so anxious, things like that. We don't want to stress them out, especially because we're not even physically there to help them.
Is all of this open access software, or is the school board paying for it? How's all that work?
All the Google applications are paid for by the school. Flipgrid is just a free application that we used a couple times during the year, and I wanted to make sure I didn't introduce any new technology, so I had to use Flipgrid when we went out of school. But it's turned into a great outlet for them. Kids are doing TikTok dances and all sorts of fun things.
There's no cost obligation from the family.
Oh, no.
Good.
No, it's all, the kids can just log on that day or not. They can just do their paper packets at home. I will have like optional fun live activities, like we did charades, which was very difficult. We did a couple like computer games where we all logged on at the same time, and we got to see each other and hear each other. We did a scavenger hunt. Of course, these are not academic activities, but it got those kids to log in, and then toward the end of the activity, I was able to ask them, hey, what page are you on for your packet? Like, just to kind of like, so they know I do care about them, and I also care about their academic success.
Mm-hmm.
Cailla, I know you mentioned that these services are provided by the school and everything, but what about the devices to access these, like TikTok? That's kind of more of a mobile app, if I'm correct. So are the kids being given the devices by the school to be able to get on these?
No, since the school is we're not required to do anything online. The school did not give out any devices. But also, when I say TikTok, we're not actually using TikTok. They're just dancing to music, and they're putting it on Flipgrid. But they love the app TikTok, so I try to use that in making Flipgrid more fifth grade like.
Mm-hmm. But just because we kind of represent the working poor class here on this podcast, obviously, would you kind of say, though, that when it comes to the funner side of those educational activities, even though they are kind of extracurricular to a point, that some of the lower income students who might not have access to devices to allow them to get online, or they don't have internet access at home because they can't afford it. In a way of an exclusion standpoint,
Oh,
where are you like, do you have a
definitely.
problem with some students not being able to access this?
Some students can only access the apps because, well, all the 17 kids in my class do have internet access at home. Um, 15 of them have laptops and or a computer, but the two that don't only have phones, and they are not able to go to Google Classroom and like type a paragraph on there at all because they have a phone. So it unfortunately this pandemic is showing just how inequitable education can be when the resources are not identical. So when they are all in my classroom, we all have the exact same Chromebook. We're all on the exact same size desk, and they're all this pencil. They're the same. Everything is a level playing field. So one of the main things that I know I'm worried about, and all the teachers are really worrying about, is that yes, we can assign all these optional enriching activities, but the kids that really need those enriching activities aren't even able to access them. The kids that are they are going to fly by no matter what are the ones that are doing it, and we're so happy that they are. But it is just completely inequitable, and it makes us very sad, teachers in general, because we always want to do right by every kid. And when we're all in the same room, we feel that we can accomplish that a little bit with a little bit more completion.
As far as special needs students, do you know what their experience is like? Are their full-time aides out of work, or do they go to their homes? What's going on with that? What kind of special assistance are they getting?
I'm actually not sure what the aides are doing unless they are full-time aides. I know that those aides are being paid their normal salary, but the hourly ones, I don't know what's going on with them. I know they're not going to the kids' homes, and I know that a lot of the kids that are at risk or in the special education program, they are some of those kids that don't have the access. So even a video session would not really suffice. They do have a couple options. I do remember reading in one of our emails, parents could request a weekly, like a tutoring session, essentially, a weekly tutoring session or a daily tutoring session at the parent's request. But that's another huge issue. I don't actually have any special needs kids in my classroom. I'm just a general ed classroom, so I'm not always privy to those conversations.
Right.
I want to backtrack a little bit and go back to the division between people who might not have access to these, like you said, the kids who probably need it the most. When you're back in the classroom and things sort of start to settle down a little bit, do you feel like you've learned anything through this experience that might help you be able to include these kids in the discussion when you're all together in the classroom?
Yeah, I know that we just got Google this year, so we actually don't really give homework online. We've never done homework online, but I do know that I give less homework. I've given less homework every year. This is my 8th year, and the more I learn about these different families, the more I realize that math page 95 is not on the top of their list. So I would much rather work with the kids hardcore all day long and let them truly have a break at home where they can just kind of be themselves, and if they have difficult situations at home they can deal with those situations. So I've never been big on homework and things like that. Of course they always have to read, but that's just one thing I've learned throughout the last 8 years working in Washington Borough. And there are bigger fish to fry. So when it
Yeah.
comes to technological inequities, I would say I'm not going to exactly change what I expect because I've never really expected too much technology from them when it comes to their home life. But one thing I'm definitely going to still do is this Flipgrid social component because it's safe. Everything's recorded. I don't have to worry about them being inappropriate or anything. But you get to see a side of them that you don't normally see, and it's great. And it's so easy to incorporate their interests into math problems or
Mhm.
language arts projects. So since this pandemic happened, unfortunate as it is, I did learn something about the social aspect of school and and I've always known it's important, but it's almost it's so vital to who these kids are.
Yeah, especially in fifth grade. Um,
It's really beautiful.
yeah,
You're learning a different way to teach. It's really incredible.
yes.
Yeah, it's rewarding and very nerve-wracking.
And what percentage of your students, roughly, is without the technology? So if your
um,
school is 100 people, 100 students, how many of
oh,
them would be,
hmm. I
how
would
many of
estimate probably 20%. That's just off the top of my head. No data to back that up. Just from conversations and working in the district for as long as I have, I would say about 20% of the kids don't have a laptop or an actual desktop at home or internet at home. But I know that almost all of them have a phone, and I know almost all of them have their parents have phones.
if this form of education lasted, like this became our new way of doing things, do you think those we could accommodate those 20% and the special needs and all that and make it work?
Totally.
If
Honestly, if they
totally.
had told us on March 13th, okay, you're not going to be there for the rest of the year, we would
Hmm.
probably have needed a couple hours, but we could have figured it out digital from the very beginning. But because it was only supposed to be 2 weeks, a little band-aid, I feel that we were like, okay, packets will do. That's fine. And it keeps getting more and more time keeps getting added, so it's like a multiple band-aids instead of one giant solution. I know that there are companies out there that are giving free internet access to certain kids, and if we had known ahead of time, if we had more notice that we were going to be out of school for longer, I feel that we could have gotten that information out to those specific families. And we would have been able to get the technology release forms and be able to send those Chromebooks with them, the ones they've been using all year long that they know how to use. So I think it did change very quickly in like about a week. A lot of
Yeah.
people are saying that now everything's going to be online because of this, and I'm like, oh, all right. But there's no way to test the kids to see if what they're if they're learning online. A lot of the teacher groups that I'm a part of, there are teachers in this town, and they're like, wow, these parents are really great writers. So a lot of the parents are helping extensively, so they don't really know what the kids are able to do by themselves.
Yeah. What's the level of parent participation on the online thing? You said there's a special parent portal.
Okay, so yeah, it's really just a communication app. I've used it all year long, just to kind of like say, oh, field trip forms due on this day, and oh, little Johnny needs to be nicer to Kevin, stuff like that. That's what I use Class Dojo for. But now I use it for I've organized a couple birthday sing-alongs. We parked outside a couple students' houses and we sang happy birthday to them. So I'm able to do a lot more with this app than I originally intended.
That's great.
Kayla, I know that we're just mentioning that there might be a move toward more online work, and that might be kind of the future. And talking about how a lot of this online stuff, it is extracurricular, as we talked about. But the fact that the school district has Chromebook. It just seems like online would be easier. It would be easier for you teachers, for the students, for the parents. Why aren't these Chromebooks being prioritized? I understand there's so much going on, and I know you teachers can't do anything about it, but why is the administration at your school not moving toward getting these Chromebooks out there. I know, what about low income parents that can't access, I know it's just some general communication back and forth and field trip forms, but I mean, this might be important for, low income parents to be able to have access to. It might make things easier. It might, to be able to contact you maybe through email or, that communication back and forth. Why are the
Definitely
Chromebooks not being
agree.
prioritized?
Yeah, we reached out to our administrator a couple weeks ago, and she has approved the kids that don't currently have devices to get those Chromebooks. But the internet kids, I don't know about them because I'm not part of that group of teachers that has kids without internet. But my two that don't have Chromebooks, they are going to get them on May 1st. So that's exciting, and it'll be we're still working out the kinks. So I don't want to say anything too definitely. But I believe next Tuesday we are going to agree to do online teaching, at least for my grade, because all of the kids in my grade have internet. They just didn't have devices. But kids in other grades, it's a by grade thing, so that it's equitable. But I agree that if like we had known, or maybe if administration had thought ahead that we would be out for such an extended period of time, they would have put more emphasis on that, because they did leave it up to us that one week that they gave us, those 5 days. She said, you need to contact every single parent individually, ask them if they have internet access and a device. And that will determine what kind of activities you do. And at the time, one student's parent didn't respond in our fifth grade. And so we had to just do paper because it had to be equal for everyone. So we are in May 1st, for fifth grade anyway, we'll be online. And the fifth grade teachers and I decided that we were only going to do 1 hour maximum because they have to share multiple devices with different siblings. And when you mentioned that it'll be easier for parents, there's one student in my class, her mom is an essential worker. It's just her mom, her, and her little brother. And the mom goes to work and she takes care of her little brother. She's 11, and the mom comes home after 12 hours. And I left this little girl a voice message using Bokaroo.com. It just leaves audio messages, and she sent me the sweetest audio message back. I like started to tear up because I said to her, "Oh, I hope you're doing okay. I'm so proud of you. You did an online assignment. You didn't have to do it. I'm so proud of you. Tell me about your daily schedule. What did you figure out?" And then she told me that the whole situation, and I'm like, "Oh, my heart." So the kids are dealing with adult problems, and so unfortunately, academics have taken the back burner this time, and I think that actually is kind of the right decision in this case. But we are all as teachers are really, really worried about September.
Is there talk of permanently moving classes online? I know I saw an article the other day where some university, I'm a college student, so I know it's quite different, but where some universities were talking about maybe the possibility of not doing in-person classes until 2021 if this like got worse. I don't know like what the actual possibility of that is, but as of right now, what is going to happen in August when the school year resumes? Is it going to be online or in person? Has there been talk about that?
I haven't heard anything about that from my district, although I know that California is preparing for an online September. That makes me think, ooh, okay, well, what would I do if that were me? I love to plan. So I have actually already made an online classroom and kind of mapped out what kind of activities I would want to do first, just to make myself feel a little bit more prepared mentally for it. I am moving to sixth grade math next year. So I am moving with my class, which kind of makes me just so happy because I get to see them again. And I I know exactly what they know, and I know them pretty well. So starting in September will be a lot easier. Um, I'm just worried about the lack of knowledge for fifth grade. So I have also made an online course for them that they can do optionally throughout July and August. That'll be 30 minutes a day. So I'm trying to do whatever I can, at least, even if not from home, just to kind of cover my bases so I know in my heart that I did everything I could. For online classes in college, I totally get that. That makes a lot more sense. I doubt that will ever happen for public school, for fifth grade or elementary, because this age group, they can't really stay home until they're, I think, officially 12 or 13, right? So I don't think that would happen in public school at this age.
Completely, that's a good point. So are there any worries then, if if there are still these precautions going on, or do you have any worries, if like say colleges are going online, like kind of as a universal thing, and then public schools are still open? Do you think there will be further precautions, like when it comes to classroom settings?
Honestly, I've seen a lot of stuff online saying that kids will stay 6 feet apart in the classroom. Like, what are you gonna have? Like 5 kids in the room? No one can sharpen their pencil. Like, it's just bizarre thinking that that would even work. But I think our governor said today, or maybe it was yesterday, that if we do go back, we would have to wear masks. And I
Oh
was thinking
wow.
about that for a while. I'm like, that's crazy. I'm like, wait a minute. No, like it's good because we'd be back, but we just have to take some precautions. And I think that that would be good because as I said, the social component is really lacking in these kids' lives right now.
Is this easier for teachers or harder
Hmm.
than being in the classroom? Or is it just
Depends
different?
on the teacher, I suppose. I
Right.
know that for me, I enjoyed the first couple days. I'm like, oh, this is so nice. Middle of March, relaxing. And then I realized quickly that we were not coming back in 2 weeks. And I immediately, my brain shot to, oh no, they pay me to teach this list of stuff to this list of children, and I have not completed my job. I have not completed my list. What can I do to get this information into these kids' heads? So I started racking my brain for ways to trick them into learning online and all sorts of things. So I've had to be more creative, but a lot of teachers have the mentality of, well, administration has to tell me what to do. I'm not going to do anything unless they specifically tell me what to do, which is, I suppose, that maybe it's a personality trait that some people have. But I would much rather try everything, and then if they say, "Hey, stop it," I'll stop.
Yeah.
Kayla, I wanted to ask you, do you know, are they still holding board meetings and if the structure of it's changed at all?
I don't know actually. I do know that we've been waiting to hear about how we are supposed to do grades. And the board meeting I want to say is the 27th, so in 10 days. Yeah. So I don't know if they're gonna do online or in person 6 feet away. But they didn't tell us, and we're still waiting on that meeting to figure out what kind of grade, like pass fail, or are we supposed to just grade what we have for the third marking period, even though we didn't do the third marking period like the last couple tests. So we've got questions for sure.
In addition to being a fifth grade teacher, you're also a mom of a 3.5-year-old.
Yeah.
So how has that impacted that life?
She's very much attached to me now, so I don't think I could ever drop her off at daycare again without her crying. But I feel like I have a classroom of one now because I love to teach. So now we just have a different curriculum. Her and I, we're working on drawing, writing our letters and doing gymnastics, and we have online dance classes, and so we do have a lot of things to do. The only thing that concerns me is that some teachers have to teach online classes in real time, like I don't know, from 8 to 12 or something. How in the world do they do that when they have their own kids at home? And how do you feel right about doing right by both groups? Like if you have 3 kids at home that need you, and then you're just going to sit on your computer teaching other people's kids for 4 hours, are you going to ignore your kids? Like it's just it blows my mind. So I am very thankful actually that we don't have live learning if we were to do online classes, I would teach my class at like 7 or 8 p.m. and then record it and then post it the next day. I've thought about that in case they do approve our online classes. But I think about those parents, those parents that are teachers and they're married to like an essential worker where they're not even home. That is just a lot to ask of a teacher, especially because a lot of people know that we're going to go the extra mile no matter what. So I feel like in that case, it's kind of taking advantage of our heart.
I know when I was a teacher, when I came home from all day being with kids, I couldn't fathom if I was coming home to more kids. You know, I
Oh,
would I would need an hour of silence, or just give me 1 hour of peace and quiet, and then I'll be able to deal with the next batch. You know, I need a lunch break in between at dinner.
oh yeah, I've had those days for sure. But on those days, I get to go to the theater.
Going back to when we were talking about how teachers have also been inconvenienced in this, and you said it kind of depends on the type of teacher, or
Yeah.
who the person is when to determine how big the inconvenience has been. So when we talk about working poor teachers, when it comes to having access to their own ways of communication to their students through online, and do you know any of any teachers where this has been a hindrance to them? Like, are teachers allowed to use school technology, or is this solely on them now to use their own technology and to come up with their own devices to teach on a platform where they haven't had to before?
So since our district, um, everything is on paper. So we have like we really just expecting the kids to do the paperwork and then bring it back. I have elected to reach out with digital technology. Some teachers don't have the means to do that. They either don't have the proper internet connection or they have such a spotty internet connection, it's not even worth it. So I know one teacher in particular that has another teacher reach out to her own class for her. She just texts and then the message will be sent out or an extra little assignment will be sent out to them just in case they're on and they're checking. And so in that case, it is for the teachers that don't have the awesome technology. It is a huge inconvenience and probably that's another deterrent. So if they're not great with technology, they might not venture out to try new ways of reaching out to kids. Like for instance, I at home right now, I have a desktop and I have my school's webcam that I borrowed so that I could talk with the kids in case they wanted to. And I also have a lot of teachers have kind of like a side job. And I know that I got let go from my side job. I cleaned servers for different companies and online. I clean servers online. And because it's a small business, they let me and the other techs go as soon as this pandemic started. So that was inconvenient to say the least, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I just worry about you teachers, and I know you all are doing all you can, and teachers that are struggling. I mean, they've struggled well before this, and I know some teachers even have to, afford to buy their students their own supplies, and when they work in a district that doesn't have the adequate funding. So I just know this is a further hindrance.
Yeah, it's a huge inequality. And if my district were to require us to do online learning, I would assume that they would give us Chromebooks to work with or something. I can imagine that they wouldn't. Like, oh, I'm not able to do online teaching because the teacher doesn't have the equipment. So what? Those 17 kids don't get taught. Um,
Right.
that's maybe another reason why we went with paper because it's more reliable.
I loved your TikTok dance. She had two students who were celebrating their 11th birthday, and she did a dance, just a silly dance on TikTok.
Right.
Like this long.
Yeah, these kids love TikTok. It's it's like their way of life. So I made a TikTok, saved it on TikTok, then I recorded it and I put it on Flipgrid and Class Dojo and Google Classroom. And then I deleted it off TikTok. I'm trying to engage them in fun things so that they actually want to do the work. And funnily enough, there's a student, his birthday was last Tuesday. So we went outside his house, we beat the horn, we sang happy birthday, we made a huge deal. He was very embarrassed that we were all out there singing him happy birthday. We put a balloon on his mailbox. And all of a sudden, I get an email from his dad the next day, and he had a question about the homework assignment. Having us sing to him kind of like woke him back up, and and he actually wanted to, I guess, either please me or do his part in the class or something. Kind of clicked with him. The way to get through to these kids is through unusual social activities.
I'm sure it gave him a sense of belonging and that someone cares. And you went out of your way to show this kid that you care, and that's what it's all about.
And I just have to say, it sounds like, you guys are doing just everything possible, you teachers. And it's just amazing the amount of work you have all had to put in. And we just all really appreciate it. And I know I'm a college student, like I said, but I know like professors are also doing a lot of the things you all are having to do. And just kind of being involved in that, being a student, I just know the process has been nuts. But just getting a little political here. I don't know how much you're kind of following the race for presidency, but what political candidates are you kind of eyeing that would be most representative of teachers, in particular the working poor class of teachers?
I think that any candidate that values the at-risk population, they got my vote. Because a lot of the challenges that us teachers have are those kids that are at risk and their family did not get the help that they need, either mental issue kind of therapy type help, maybe they're on free and reduced lunch kind of help. They need their family kind of shapes the way that the kid learns. So a lot of the challenges that I face in the classroom are because of certain programs that aren't quite doing enough for my satisfaction. And would support any candidate that gives those kids more of a chance. And typically that is a candidate in the Democratic Party, just through my past couple of years of history. That's who teachers will typically vote for. I have always been a Bernie fan since, what is that, 4 years ago? Yes, because he seems to understand the the working poor best out of all the candidates. He comes off in a way that makes it feel like he gets it and he knows what to do to fix it. And although I wouldn't have voted Biden over Bernie. I will vote for Biden because I do feel that he will do a better job than Trump.
Cailla, we've really just appreciated having you come on here. I just have to say, I think I can speak for everyone when I say this has just been a great discussion. Before you go, is there just any kind of final call you have when it comes to the working poor class of teachers?
I would say that everyone needs to kind of take a step back and reflect. And during this pandemic, unfortunately, we have the perfect time to. And this should kind of shine a light on those who don't have as much. And although it is affecting them in this pandemic, it also affects them in the regular times as well. And to be more sympathetic to different family issues. So it's not just COVID-19 that is an issue. There are many other issues that families have been struggling through all this time. And a lot of the time we don't even give it a thought. And we need to give it a thought and connect with kids on a more real level.
I miss you, Cailla. I can't wait to get back on stage with you.
I know, it'll be so fun.
pleasure. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice talking about teaching again. It's been a while. I really appreciate all the questions, and just it was just so nice talking with you guys. So intelligent.
Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the Democratic race pretty officially now. He's endorsed Joe Biden. Bernie Sanders was quoted saying, "Today I am asking all Americans, I'm asking every Democrat, I'm asking every independent, I'm asking a lot of Republicans to come together in this campaign to support your candidacy, which I endorse, to make certain that we defeat somebody who I believe is the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country." And that was what Bernie Sanders had told Joe Biden. So I know in the previous episode that we talked about, Bernie ended up suspending his campaign. He was still going to collect delegates. Now I guess it's kind of up in the air what's happening now. He's endorsed Joe Biden. Joe Biden in the interview basically, I mean, in the conversation, basically mentioned that he was now the Democratic nominee, that Bernie had endorsed him. So what are the panel's thoughts? So on our first podcast, we really went into the idea of Bernie or bust. And now 5 episodes in, 5 weeks in, Bernie's dropped out, and now it's this idea, Biden or bust, question mark. So thoughts?
I think for myself, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do until November. Until this thing happens, we don't know what this is going to look like. Right now, I'd say I cannot vote for Biden, but who knows? We might have a very different landscape come November. So I reserve judgment as far as that goes. But what's Bernie did what he always said what he was going to do. He was going to endorse the Democratic candidate. There's bigger fish to fry right now. He's got work to do as a senator. He's a very busy guy anyway. What I find most impressive is a lot of his high-level surrogates, people like Brianna Joy Gray, his press secretary, is being very vocal about not supporting Biden, and and many others. I mean, Nina Turner's been quiet, but she's come out the last few days. And this it's highlighting that this really was never about Bernie. It's about the movement, and he's out now. He did his part. He got this thing going. We all love him, and now it's up to us. This movement to continue is going to need leadership, but everything else is there. The infrastructure's there. He taught millions of people how to organize, how to do grassroots organization and create something, and to really take back our power that belongs to us.
Mm-hmm. He definitely created an awareness.
And when it comes to the idea, go ahead. Sorry.
I think it's pointless to talk about the presidential election because right now that's fine. It's Biden and Trump, whatever. Those are both non-choices. I mean, when it comes down to it, if it's November and it's still those two, you hold your nose and do what you got to do. But I think to talk about it now, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It is what it is, and there's lots of other work to be done. I mean, there's a lot of organizing going on, and I think we're going to see a viable third party enter this race before we get there.
Well, I think that there is a conversation here because I think that at the end of the day, Bernie dropped out and he supported everything we were supposed to be against. So we all went, saw that debate where he called, Joe Biden out on Social Security, all of this. And now he's jumping on and saying that Joe Biden's the one we have to support. And when we're talking about this movement for change, I think it is important to talk about this because, if we are going to take Bernie's platform, his movement and move it forward, I mean, this has to be discussed. I mean, at the end of the day, are we supposed to submit to the establishment or not? Because that's what, Bernie ultimately did. I'm kind of pissed off about that, honestly, that it kind of just feels like controlled opposition. And maybe we need a movement much vastly different than that of Bernie Sanders. And I mean, with him with what he stood for at the core, Medicare for all and everything, that's great. But ultimately supporting Joe Biden I don't think, he should be praised for that. And I do think it's up for, discussion because, at the end of the day now, he's our nominee. Bernie isn't doing anything against that. Yeah, we knew he wouldn't. But I think it's, still a frustrating thing, personally.
And just so everybody knows, Bernie almost every night is doing live streams of coronavirus coverage. I mean, he has big professional doctors and scientists on there, and he does a lot of good work with that.
Well, that's great.
Yep.
What would you say, though, about Bernie supporting Joe Biden?
Well, Bernie's almost 80 years old. He spent his whole life doing this, and he's hanging up his hat. He did everything he could. You can't take what away from him, what he went through. And he's hanging up
You
his
don't
hat
think it
now.
feels hypocritical at
Of
all?
course,
Twice. He
it's
went through it twice.
hypocritical. It's hypocritical on some level, but he's doing what he always said he was going to do. I have no animosity for him. He sparked a fire that cannot be put out. There's going to be somebody better than Bernie Sanders next time. This movement is growing Bernie Sanders like you wouldn't believe. We're gonna beat this thing. We're gonna have this. He's what he started can never be taken away. And I don't hold any resentment to him.
If anything, I'm disappointed that he left, but I understand why he would. And um, Biden needs to step up and gain Bernie supporters, which I don't see him doing. I see him saying that he has this bold movement going to be happening. Biden is saying that Biden has this bold movement. I don't see anything bold about anything he's doing. I think he's a DNC robot. And that's what we're stuck with for now. And I do hope that there's a third party or some kind of solution come November and different happenings.
Well, that's
And if
why
not, I'm hoping that there's Bernie supporters will follow through with his agenda.
I don't see
And
Biden staying there until November. I mean, so much is going to depend on who he picks for vice president too. I mean, we really don't know what the landscape is going to look like in 7 months or whatever it is.
I just think, if we're, in support of a third party, then, Bernie Sanders, if he were to run as a third party, he would make a splash like no other independent running in a third party in the history, like, of our modern history, since we've known a two-party system of Democrat and Republican, has made. So if Bernie ran, he would gain attraction, he would further the movement, but he's not. He's submitting to the Democratic establishment at the end of the day. Like, it's not, just, oh, we should do this for, the greater, good. I mean, it feels like he's called, and he did it with Hillary Clinton. He's doing Joe Biden. Sure, we knew, but he's called out these, these people. He's painted them as people we don't want to vote for. Why would we want to vote for Joe Biden when he's, been, iffy on Social Security? He said, oh, go watch the YouTube video, everything. Things that people say about Donald Trump. Oh, Donald Trump's against Social Security. Well, Joe Biden's against Social Security. Donald Trump's a rapist. Joe Biden's a rapist. At the end of the day, we were just talking about how disgusting Joe Biden was. And now Bernie Sanders is endorsing this man for president. And I think when we're calling out someone who's an accused rapist, when we're calling out someone who, voted, on the wrong side of multiple things that could have hurt the working poor class people that this podcast represents, I think that their friends, the people that feed their energy, they have to be called out too. And I think when Bernie Sanders endorses the Democratic establishment, what does that say about him? And that's where I'm at. And will I vote for Biden? I have fucking no idea. But, am I disappointed in Bernie? Yeah, I'm really disappointed in how, we've talked about the money on here that's been thrown into these campaigns. What about all the money? And I'm not trying to, because I know, Bernie Sanders ran a grassroots campaign. That's how it should be done. What about all this money that people threw in, millions of dollars? He's got the most individual contributions. Well, that means individual working poor people donated to him, and now their voices are not going to be heard with Joe Biden, and him endorsing him falsifies that idea. And I think that's all.
All the money that Bernie supporters donated went to the DNC. Period.
Exactly. What does that say about Bernie?
Well, you donated to the DNC.
It's not about
He
Bernie.
was running
That's
Democrat.
us.
That's where the funds
That
go.
campaign on, not me, us. It's not about Bernie. We don't have to vote for Biden. Bernie wants to, good, vote for Biden. That's fine. He's out. He's done. It's up to us. That's his whole point. That was the point of his whole campaign. The guy's all going to be 80 years old. Leave him alone. He did enough. It's up to us.
He did enough
I
once.
just my only
And
argument is when we're just I just have to say my only argument is when we're calling out people for being established, when we're calling out people for doing wrong, when we are calling out Joe Biden, who's also pushing 80, and we don't let up on him. Why do certain people get a pass? We've talked about, well, certain people don't deserve a pass. I mean, we could say, and I'm not trying to make I hate Bernie party, but I'm trying to say the disappointment's there. I think it should be heard. I think it's definitely considerable. I think it should be considered. And I think people have a right to be pissed off at Bernie. I'm pissed off at Bernie. I think people that donated money definitely should be.
I'm not disappointed in Bernie. I'm disappointed in America for going with one of the two wings of the same damn bird. Bernie had to run Democrat in order to run it all. Number one, he's an independent. And if this country allowed more than those two friggin' parties, he could have run independent. But everything that he's fighting against, the corporate run world, is what the DNC and the GOP are. They're corporately run, they're private corporations. He had to pick one in order to run, which he did. He knew it was a losing battle at this time, especially with this pandemic happening and him being in his position as a senator. So as a losing battle, as he saw this losing battle, he did what he had to do. He had to accept defeat.
And he got way further than he ever should have. They were
Yes.
never going to let him have it. But look what he did. Look what he did. It's incredible. To
Yes.
say it wasn't enough, I think is really disrespectful.
Oh, and I am not, I have to say, I'm not trying, and what does that say? I'm not allowed to speak out against Bernie Sanders. I have all the respect for people that fight for the working poor class, but I don't have respect for people that say one thing and go back on, another. And I understand, yes, he said this about Joe, but I'm raising concerns that people have that people genuinely have. I'm not raising this to say, and I'm not raising this, I hate Bernie. I'm raising this that people are frustrated. I'm frustrated. And if we're talking about voting for an independent, we're talking about Bernie Sanders could run as an independent now. He could, he was planning on, if he was planning on seeing this whole presidency out, why not? I don't know. I'm raising things not in order to be disrespectful, though.
Follow that thought. What's it take to run an independent campaign for president? He does not have the resources for that. He did all he could within the DNC. To ask him to do that now, it's just not realistic. Especially when he knows they're not going to let him have it anyway. He knows that he doesn't want to waste any more of his donors' money. And the money is a tragedy, but that's not on him. That's on the DNC. They should, if they weren't going to let him have it, they should never have let him run. Why make all those people waste their money? And what's more important than money is these volunteers, these millions of volunteers, learned real grassroots organizing skills. There's all kinds of stuff that people have been doing online, getting ready for all of this, working for Bernie, really hardcore volunteers. And that's knowledge that they have now. The movement goes on. We just are missing a leader. But the movement goes on.
And that just brings us back to what we've talked about before, about how it was never about Bernie in the first place. And it was about his movement and his ideas and his policies. And I don't think that now is the time to put Bernie Sanders on a pedestal. And I think that when you talk about he's 80, leave him alone, well, he's 80, so he's got nothing to lose at this point. I think that he could have held it out, or um, you know, uh, he could have kept this movement going. And he didn't, and he endorsed Joe Biden, and I don't think that that deserves praise. But I do think that it's time to move on and take the valuable lessons that Bernie supporters have learned through all of this and move on from there. But I don't think that it's the time to be putting Bernie Sanders on a pedestal right now. I think that now is the time to be putting the pedal on the gas.
And if he did run independent, like Austin said, there are hard feelings from Bernie supporters about him, endorsing Biden. So he wouldn't get the vote even as an independent. Now,
Well, I'm saying before he did this,
He
and the
should have
thing
never
is,
endorsed.
and
Sorry,
the
Austin.
thing,
Go ahead.
I mean, just going back to, this, just the thing is, I'm never saying what should Bernie do. I mean, I'm raising questions. Why, is Bernie not considering an independent third party run? Why is Bernie Sanders supporting Joe Biden, who is the establishment that he has called out? I mean, why after all of this time? Why after first I'm just asking why. And they're all, for me to be disrespectful for raising questions, and to say that because Bernie's 80 years old, I mean, he's still it doesn't matter his age, and that's the whole thing in this. We can't bring age into it. Well, then Bernie's a candidate for presidency, regardless of age. There's these questions that need to be raised. If they're not allowed to be raised, what does that say? And I think that all I'm saying is, why about these things? And if continue, and Bernie Sanders is an independent. He is in the Senate as an independent. So to say he's not going to get support, if people are there for the movement, they're there for the movement. Bernie, arguably, yes, the DNC is a bit, I understand, and I'm not trying, but I'm saying, why not try a third party run? Why all of a sudden why choose to endorse the establishment? If you're not, this controlled opposition candidate, if you're not with the establishment, why do you submit to it so often? And I just think they're interesting questions to raise. And that's all I'm doing.
I just
they
want to
are.
also
And
say that
even in
why
2000,
the Bernie Sanders is not going to be president. He's going to
breaking up.
analyze, okay, how can I be most effective for working class people, for my supporters, and that's his role in the Senate. He's still a senator and a very important senator, and he needs to be able to work within that framework. And his move to endorse Biden was very political. It was not the Bernie we all know, and it was not what we wanted him to do. It was not an integrity move. It was a political move because he knows to do the best that he can for his constituents, this is where he needs to be.
Yeah, you kind of do what life hands you and then adjust accordingly, in 2016, I know there were a lot of people that were who didn't like that Bernie was not running independent. Like they said, well, I would have voted for him if he just ran independent. He's an independent. Why is he running in with the DNC? It's because as president, we have those two parties, and that's all. So
Well,
he had,
and the point is not, and the other point is not running independent is that it would be a extreme long shot that he would win the presidency as an independent, and if he didn't, he would give the election to Trump. It would be in the history books that he's the one who got Trump elected. You know what I mean?
right, right.
And that's significant.
And you were just saying that Bernie wouldn't have been an effective president anyway. So if he was never going to be an effective president, and the point was never about getting him in the White House, and the point was about his movement, then I don't think that it's ridiculous to call him out on moving against his integrity at this point.
No, I
Because that,
agree. I mean, it was
that's all he's
it was a
got.
political move. It was a political move. It was not an integrity move. I definitely agree with that.
I also just don't understand we're going to support a third party candidate, but then say, well, Bernie Sanders would be called out for splitting up the votes, but you want to vote for a third party, which would inevitably split up the votes when you're saying there's a two-party system that can only gain the votes, but so I'm just saying, I mean, I don't think this is a right or wrong situation. I just think it's a difference of opinion, but I just, have to go back my, opinion, wasn't meant to be disrespectful, but I think the questions are valid. And I think, there is another side. I mean, there are Bernie supporters that are emotional about this, who feel like their voice are not being heard. And if we shut them out, if we say that opinion is disrespectful, then, we're saying they're deplorable. We're saying, go to the other side. No, we have to hear this out. I mean, God, I am a hardcore Bernie supporter. I've stuck up for Bernie, a lot, and just in personal conversations and stuff like that. And I mean, I've supported him here on this podcast. Just have to say, not being disrespectful, and a difference of opinion, about Bernie's presidency, and the way we feel about him dropping out when everybody who supported, not just us, but anybody who supported Bernie, we all feel some type of way about this. And it's not a right or wrong or disrespectful or not. It's about, what do we want in a candidate, and moving forward for change. If we're advocating for change, I think we need a candidate who doesn't make moves that are political. And I mean, isn't that the whole thing? We don't have a candidate that is part of the establishment. Well, all these questions that are being raised, it just feels, the connection's there. And I mean, obviously, when you're running under that platform, it is. So, maybe I was just a fool the whole time. But I mean, I feel like these questions are valid.
Yeah,
and
no.
the fact that you're mad is because you care. And Bernie, out of all those candidates up there, Bernie was the only one talking about the $12 an hour worker. And up until Bernie, nobody even recognized it. Nobody even saw the $12 an hour worker who doesn't qualify for as poverty, and they're far from rich. He was the speaker for us. He got us he put the spotlight on the working class, the working poor, and I'm thankful that he did. But now we got to run with it.
The establishment is bad, and I think we all agree on that. And it's something we look for in a candidate that is, in general against the idea of doing everything that we've done that doesn't work. It seemed like for a long time that was Bernie Sanders. Now he's not the candidate. I just think it's important to look at like the people we are calling out when we are calling out, people who are part of the establishment, people who do support that. When we talk about calling these people out, it has to be universal. We have to do it for, I think, everyone. Like, if the establishment is bad, the establishment is bad. We can't make exceptions, or we become part of the problem. We become part of everything we were fighting against. I think that, we, support Joe Biden, blindly and just go into the night for the greater good. That's everything, we were just saying, not to do. If we chalk it up, well, we did it for a political move, it's everything we've said we are against. When we call out, Elizabeth Warren for supporting Joe Biden, but we don't call out Bernie Sanders for this, and we claim very thin lines and reasons, then I don't think we're seeing the bigger picture.